In this video, we'll be demonstrating how to clean and assemble an FTIR sample cell. Make sure you gather all the supplies you need before getting started. This is the compression ring for the sample cell. You can clean this with methanol and water. If it looks like it has a lot on it, be sure to use both. If it looks fairly clean and you know that you're running a familiar sample, you can simply clean this with water, and you'll dry this with a chem wipe. Now we're cleaning the O-rings. There are 2 O-rings for every sample cell. These can be cleaned with water and methanol. Be sure that your O-ring is compatible with the solvent you're using to clean your sample cell as well as the solvent in your sample. See the other video about compatibility. These can be patted dry with a chem wipe. For the FTIR windows, of which there are 2, be sure to use an appropriate solvent. Note that some of the windows are incredibly hygroscopic, so you should not use water on them. However, if you're using calcium fluoride, which is our most common window, you can use water on these. However, an organic solvent is best for cleaning. To dry these off very, very gently, use lens paper, not a chem wipe, to dry them off completely. Try not to put your fingers ever directly on the windows, only on the edge, and make sure that you're wearing gloves. The spacer is quite hard to see. These come in a variety of sizes from 6 micrometers thick all the way up to a few hundred micrometers thick. Pick these up with the tweezers because it's simply easiest to keep a hold of them with the tweezers. These should only be washed with water. Once you wash them with water, very gently dry them with a chem wipe. To clean the cell body, simply use a little bit of methanol or deionized water, squirt it into the inside part of the cell body, and wipe it dry with a chem wipe. In order to reassemble your sample cell, first put in the lower O-ring. So take one of your O-rings and insert it using the tweezers into the grooves on the bottom part of the cell body. Once your O-ring is in place, take one of your clean windows and gently push it into the cell body. Again, try not to put your fingers on the window directly. If it goes in sideways, as shown in the video, simply use the tweezers to tap on just the edge of the window until it falls in flat. Next, you will put in the spacer, again using the tweezers. Very gently get the spacer to lay flat on the window that's already inside of the cell body. Here's where you would put your approximately 60 to 75 microliters or more, if you're using a bigger spacer, into the sample cell. You'll put that droplet using the micropipetter directly in the center of the donut or the spacer onto the window. Once you have your sample in place, gently place the next window on top of your sample. This will cause all of your sample to go flat based on the spacer size between the two windows. You may have a little bit leaking out at this point. This is fine. If you have too much leaking out, gently use lens paper to absorb the sample that's coming out of the sides. Next, you'll put an O-ring in on top of the second window. On top of the O-ring that you've gently wedged in with your tweezers, you'll put the compression ring. Note that there's a small notch in the compression ring, which you will have to line up with the cell body. Once you have your compression ring in place and gently pressed in, you'll take the retaining nut, which is the larger black piece, circular piece, and you're going to very gently screw this into the cell body. Be careful with these threads. Never, ever, ever make this more than hand tight, especially if you're using the temperature dependent cell. As you heat up your sample, it will try to expand and you can destroy the threads. So please do be careful to make sure that your threads are aligned. If you feel resistance, undo and try again. That probably means that things are not lined up correctly. Once you have your sample cell assembled, as needed, you can use the little air puffer to blow off any amount of dust before you put it into the slide plate holder of the FTIR, but also be sure you hold it up to the light and check for any air bubbles. Air bubbles near the center of the cell where the IR light will pass through will absorb light very differently from your sample, and so you'll be collecting a very different spectrum.